Okay, before we go into all the issues that I listed we're going to talk about,
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention one more thing. It's not even just Jacob and the Smoke Monster. They introduced some pretty interesting characters in the temple, Dogen and the Interpreter, who I thought, I really liked those two. I could have stood to actually learn a little bit more about them. Where did they go?
Yeah, nowhere.
And where did the whole temple thing go, really?
Well, yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Okay, so...
But you know what? I just have to say that I didn't care in the first place.
No, but that actually had the potential to be somewhat interesting, and they just drop it and move on.
That's true. The stuff that I cared the most about were moments like when Jack and Locke were debating whether or not they should blow the hatch, and that kind of thing, and that sort of faith versus pragmatism. Mm-hmm. That stuff interested me, and you had this backdrop of this mysterious stuff that I didn't really care about.
Yeah, it's gone here.
Yeah.
So... unanswered questions and unresolved issues. Question number 1. Zombie Saeed.
Oh yeah, what the fuck was that?
He's resurrected, presumably by the Smoke Monster, but I'm still confused about that. I still don't know what brought him back.
Well,
they
Samurai dude held him underwater.
No. The people in the temple said, we didn't bring him back. Saeed was under the impression that the Smoke Monster brought him back, but how the fuck did he do that? And if he could just do that, why didn't he bring, anybody back?
Right. And what was Saeed's function in the whole thing?
No idea. But I'm just confused as to why, because they said, he's got a bad spirit in him,
right.
And when it gets to his heart, he's going to be gone. And we actually see that happen. But what was that about? I mean, what was wrong with him? What the hell was wrong with Saeed? And they said the same thing was wrong with Claire.
Right.
So what was wrong with her? That whole thing is just completely off track. It doesn't make any sense
just
whatsoever.
Evaporated.
Yeah, it just evaporated into nothing. Number 2, the kid on the island. The blonde kid that they kept on seeing who said, you know the rules, you can't kill him, and the one who asked for the ashes. What the fuck was that kid?
Yeah, I don't know.
Were they just like, throwing idea darts?
That's kind of what... And you know what? Even if they were just throwing idea darts in the first couple of seasons... They were good ones. They actually kind of...
But there was also the potential for them to explain themselves later. They can't do this now.
Right, exactly. And the problem with a show like this is that it has to end.
Yes.
And...
but like I said, I'm not saying they have to explain every little thing, but these are things that
they might have made like a little... Put it on a Post-it note or something.
Yeah, a footnote at least.
Make a list of things that you'd like to have explained at the end.
A big, huge... problem that I do for the life of me cannot understand. We were told in the Jacob and Smoke Monster backstory that if you get thrown down into the light, something horrible is going to happen to you. She said it was worse than death, and we figured that out because that's how the Smoke Monster was born. Jacob threw his brother down there and he turns into the Smoke Monster.
Right.
In this final episode, 2 people go down there.
Yeah.
So why didn't they turn into Smoke Monsters?
Who knows?
What would happen if the Smoke Monster went in again? Is he going to get cursed again? And why didn't anybody else get cursed?
I don't know.
I mean, that's just dangling out there. That's frustrating the hell out of me.
Mm-hmm.
What was going to happen if the Smoke Monster got off the island?
I don't know.
Everyone was worried, like, we can't let him get off the island. I think Hurley said if he gets off the island, we're all going to go to hell. But what was going to happen? What was he going to do? Never explained.
Fuck if I know.
2 things that I wanted to know about the previous seasons. Because, like I said, I reiterate, some things they have explained, some things they haven't explained, and I don't want to know anything. There are 2 things I want to know. First of all, we had a scene in a previous season where Ben went to Charles Whitmore's penthouse.
Yeah.
Charles said, "Have you come here to kill me, Benjamin?" And Ben says, "We both know I can't do that."
Right.
In this season, he shoots him to death.
Yeah, shoots him to death. So how was he able to do that
I was like, looks like you could kill him just fine there, Ben.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what that was about. Apparently they didn't either.
I mean, he could have just walked over in that season and just beat him to death with a stapler or something, I guess.
Yeah. Number 2, why the fuck were they trying to make it possible for women to give birth on the island?
Oh, I see. That's one thing that I really was interested in.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I mean, it seemed like a really important thing they were doing. They were, gathering mothers up just to try to experiment on that. That's why Juliet was there in the first place, and how the whole island fucked her whole life up. Yeah. So what was that all about?
it just went nowhere.
The whole thing is just reeks of disappointment, and they had so many opportunities in this final season.
Yeah.
This is why I didn't like the last Harry Potter book. I know you haven't read it and you're not interested in those books, but that's why it was bad. Because you want to remind these people that this is the last time these people are going to be together.
Right.
And rather than just have them waste their time here, waste their time there until the clock runs out, have this be about what they mean to each other.
The culmination of their whole relationship
and
with
their whole experience being on the island.
Yeah.
That ending had nothing to do with the island.
No, it didn't. And it had really nothing to do with them. Here's the thing. The first couple of seasons were about these people. Where did they come from? What were they before they got here? And how did the island change them?
Yes.
The later couple of seasons were really about the island. Who is Charles Whitmore? What happened between him and Ben? What was the swan or whatever there for? The pearl and this station and that station. And the more answers we got, and the more this started to be about the island, the less I cared. And
because the less it was focused on the people on the island.
Right, exactly. I have to say, in terms of final episodes and sign-offs, there are definitely worse ones. Quantum Leap comes to mind.
That's different. He got the rug pulled out.
No,
from
I know
under
that.
him.
I know that.
He would not have ended that show that way.
No, I understand that.
But yes, it was. As a final episode,
worse than that. What was the other show I was thinking of that was worse? Darn it, it was on the tip of my tongue just a minute ago.
You're not going to say St. Elsewhere, are you?
Oh, yeah, St. Elsewhere. Yeah.
Because I think this is worse than St. Elsewhere.
Oh, fuck no, it wasn't. This was... Maybe as a season.
Actually, I think that this is similar to St. Elsewhere in that I think this is an ending that the creators of the show are going to be apologizing for years
Probably,
after.
but see, tell me if you agree with me. This was a bad ending of the season. This made you, at the end of this episode, you said, okay, you wasted my time for this whole season when you could have been doing something else. The ending of St. Elsewhere was
it completely backtracks on
the whole show.
Okay, you're right.
By the way, for any youngsters that don't remember St. Elsewhere, it was a hospital show, and for the whole run of the series, all these things happened between the characters. At the end of the show, it turns out that all of the characters, the setting, and the whole show took place in an autistic kid's mind, and none of it ever really happened.
Yeah. No, you're right. That was worse.
Yeah.
You're right. That was worse. But as far as shows that I love go, I don't think that I've ever been more disappointed in my whole life.
Well, it's like, couldn't you have done 3 more seasons and maybe, gotten back to its roots or explained some more things?
As much as I thought, I'll say this for the previous season, I thought it was way too outlandish an idea to throw time travel into this, but they actually did it pretty darn well.
They did do it
Having
well.
said that, though, I would say, why don't you just get rid of the last 2 seasons and just make a final season that's good?
Right, exactly. Well, that's a good point. And the funny thing is, I was thinking about this, The Office, the UK version, in my opinion, the good version, it had 2 seasons. It was 12 episodes?
Yeah.
The Carol Burnett show left the air when it was still really popular.
Yes.
Fawlty Towers had
2 seasons.
Yeah, 2 seasons, and then they were done. They were done when they were done. They were done when they were out of ideas that worked and when they had done what they thought, was enough.
Yeah.
I thought that's kind of where they were going with this. This didn't need to end yet. I don't understand now why there were only 6 seasons.
I feel a little bit differently. I don't really care when it ends, so long as it ends well.
No, what I mean is, I thought to myself, okay, they just don't want to wear out their welcome. This is the last of the ideas they had. They didn't have any fucking ideas.
No.
So why did it end early?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
So in closing, it is a bad end to a good show.
And I would put this show, just like Quantum Leap, which had a really terrible last ending, through no fault of Belisario's, but it did nonetheless. Yes. I would put this show as a whole up there with any great show that's it with Star Trek, Twilight Zone.
I loved this show. I loved the mystery. I loved the metaphor. As a philosophy buff, I love all the little names they put out there, like Rousseau and then some of the. I had never heard of Jeremy Bentham until this show, I looked him up, and he's one of the least interesting philosophers I've ever tried to read, but still. And then even some scientists like Faraday and Hawking, obviously. Yeah. I loved the show, and I loved the characters, and I think it's a real shame they went out the way they did.
What a shame.
But I will be watching it again, and I will hopefully enjoy it as much the second time around as I did the first. Missed opportunity.
Yeah.
I've always said that I would rather see a good movie with a bad ending than a bad movie. And at the same time, it is exactly the same that I would rather see a good television series with a bad ending than a bad television series. And I still think that this was a very good television series. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch it again just to reacquaint myself with what made the series so good.
Right.
But that does not change the fact that that ending was horrible.
There's a joke in a Woody Allen movie named Bananas, where a guy is brought before this tribunal, and the tribunal says to him, you are charged with the genocide and mass murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. How do you plead? And the guy says, guilty with an explanation. And I think this season, and particularly the season and this last episode, is guilty with an explanation. There was too much.
I actually want to break this down into talking about this in a few categories, and I want to deal with the ending first. The ending. Mm-hmm. And then we'll go into the episode, and then possibly the final season.
Okay.
A quote I was thinking
let me just say, you got me into this show.
Yes.
You've been watching this season every new episode that was on. Excuse me. I didn't do that.
Uh-huh.
I caught up and I watched the final episode just today. You watched it last night, so we haven't really had a chance to discuss this at all, so this will be interesting.
I kind of feel like the episode of The Simpsons where they were trying to find the secret ingredient to something, and the scientist guy had a machine, and he goes, okay, here it is, and it turns out that the secret ingredient is love. Okay, who's been screwing with this thing? And that's exactly how I feel about this ending.
The whole light thing?
Oh, just the whole thing. We'll take this step by step. I want to talk about that too. But let's talk about the very ending of that episode, which is the ending of the entire series.
I thought that was actually the strongest point, at least in the episode.
No, it was the weakest point of anything they've ever done, and I'll explain why.
Wow, I felt differently.
Before I say that, though, I do want to say one nice thing about it. Because essentially what it was they were basically just playing a trick on us. The whole, this flash sideways, which is what they're calling it now.
Right, yeah.
It wasn't really happening. They were all dead. It was just something they were all making up so that they could remember when they got there. But, of course, in order to remember, they had to forget so that they could remember
and my
again.
My question is, if this was a place where they could all be together in death, I suppose, why did they all have separate lives?
Why did they have separate lives? Why did some of them have kids that don't exist?
Right, exactly. And now that was totally meaningless. What did we need to sit through that for?
We didn't. I will say this, though. I'm talking about the very last scene where they're all in the church, and they're all back together again, and they're all giving each other a hug. It was stupid, but the actors made that scene work.
They did.
I'll say that. I'll give them that much. They really did make that work.
I didn't think it was as stupid as you did. I just wish it
Here's my problem.
I just wish it hadn't come at the expense of lots of wasted time on the part of the audience.
Things that they could have used, time that could have been spent giving us something that we wanted to see. Mm-hmm. Because I'll tell you something. This is my problem with the ending. This show has always been about either one of two things. These people... Mm-hmm. Or the island.
Absolutely right.
And we had actually been saying in the last couple of seasons that we thought it had been getting too much about the island and not enough about the characters. Mm-hmm. But it's always been about one of those two things.
Right.
This last episode, the very ending, is basically just about where these people go when they die.
Yeah.
And I never got the sense that this show in any way was leading up to telling us where these people go when they die.
Yeah.
That issue is so far removed from not only this episode, but also the season and also the series, that if you really think about it, you could end any show with that ending.
Yeah,
the final episode of The Jeffersons could have been, oh, hey, here's this place where we all go when we die, right, but that doesn't have anything to do with what we were watching. They had the opportunity to either get into the character stuff again, which they never did in the whole series. It was in this whole season, they never really got into these people's characters. So disappointing. But we don't get any information about the island either, with one or two exceptions that were really, really dumb. So I just felt like that very last ending was so off the mark in terms of what this show has always been about. I didn't really understand it.
I thought that, well, I tell you, I was walking around out here in the parking lot while you were at work. I've had exactly the same thought. This episode wasn't about where you go when you die. I like this is going to sound really morbid. I like stories about death. I like stories. It's always scary to me. Let me go into a little bit about this. I hate movies. I hate it in movies where people die when they show heaven. I really hate that. Yeah. I much prefer, it's much more realistic and creepy to me when they show people going into heaven. Like at the end of Ghost when he says, it's beautiful, and you're looking at this place and you're like, oh my god, where is he going? I know this sounds off topic, but it really isn't. To my mind, when we leave this world, if there is an afterlife, whatever it is, it's going to be so different from this that it's scary in and of itself. Even if it's good, even if it's heaven, it's scary.
Or even if it's nothing.
Right,
no matter what happens, it's going to be different.
It's not going to be like this. This is all we get of this, and I like stuff that kind of deals with that. So I liked how that exit at the end of the episode was handled. It reminded me of the ending of Titanic, where she goes back and all the people are there and they clap for her and stuff, and that really gets to me, stuff like that. But you're right, neither the show nor the episode had anything to do with that.
No.
I don't care how the island works. I've never cared how the island worked. A lot of people have been upset with they didn't explain this. Why does this statue have 3 toes or whatever? I never cared. The most I cared about when it came to the island is how did Dharma find it, and how did that happen? That's about it. I really cared about these people. They didn't fucking do anything with him in this season, and they
did nothing. They didn't interact with each other in a way that was not servicing getting from one place to another.
And that's really all it seemed to be.
It really was
them moving around.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I want to talk about. We'll pause here, and then we'll come back in part 2, where we'll talk about the problems with the season overall.
Yeah.
Now, none of this is to say that this series has never had its share of mumbo-jumbo kind of stuff. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that they've done all the time since the series began. Yeah. And it's not that much of an insult to my intelligence that they would do something as outlandish as what they did in the end. I felt that it was going too far with all the mystical crap, to the point where earlier in the series it had been done in a way that was very subtle, in a way that was kind of under the radar.
Yeah.
This was not. This beats you in the face with the religious imagery at the end, with the the yin yang sitting on the.
I'm such a softie that actually I really liked that.
Did you?
I liked the stained glass with all the religious I saw that and I was like, oh wow, because I really like peace,
I was just kind of like
universal.
I was more of the mindset of okay, we get it. And
I don't know that was that beating you over the head. I actually thought that he walks in and then there's just all this different religious stuff.
But it's so obvious what they're doing.
No,
they're trying to please everyone with the last moment kind of a thing. And
no,
it's so obvious.
I thought the point was that it doesn't matter what religion you are. We all move on and we all get to see our friends and whatnot.
Yeah,
I actually kind of like that. I have to say,
whether or not it was touching, I did think it was more obvious than what they had been doing in the previous.
That's true.
In the previous seasons. Mm-hmm. The biggest problem. Okay, let's go down the list here. First problem that I had with this season was a complete lack of focus. Right from the very beginning, everyone gets together and they're like, okay, well, the thing with the atom bomb didn't work, so now...
What the fuck happened with that? Did it do anything?
I have no idea. Apparently not. Apparently it just dropped them back where they were.
That pisses me off.
Yeah.
Because, that's supposed to blow up at least a whole big part of the island.
Yeah, and it did and it just nothing, put a little hole in the ground.
What the hell was the point of it?
I have no idea.
I guess all it did was kill Juliet.
Yeah, oh man, and I miss her. But anyway.
I never really liked her that much.
She was one of my favorite characters.
Not mine. I like Charlie.
Yeah. Well, so then we get into the whole smoke monster thing. But then you have the characters, like I said, throughout the entirety of this season, they're going from A to B with no real rhyme or reason. I mean, I can't even really remember what track this season was on. First, they were going to the Black Rock, and then they were going to the plane, and then they weren't going to go to the plane. And the whole while, I'm thinking then they went back to their beach, where they used to be on the beach, and then they weren't there anymore. And I'm thinking to myself, you could replace any character with any other character in this season, and nothing would have changed.
You know what it kind of reminded me of?
What?
Rocky V, where it was just a tour of the sets of all the original movies.
I actually really disagree with that, because we didn't even really get much of a tour of anything that happened aside from them actually being on the island and going to weird places.
Well, that's what I mean. They're just kind of going to all the places that we've seen before.
I was also a little disappointed as to... It always felt like things were happening in real time in this show. Like, it took a while to go a sizable distance. Right. Here, they're going to Jacob's Lighthouse, and then they go back in 2 seconds, and they're going to Hydra Island, back from Hydra Island to Hydra Island.
The problem was... They had to do two things. They had to sew up these characters and what they were about and where they were going, and they had to try, which they didn't really do this at all, to answer some of the questions that they had left behind, and they didn't really do either of them.
No. I have never been under the impression that the creators of this series knew exactly what was going on at every moment, and I don't care
if they did or not.
Michael Emerson, actually, who plays Benjamin Linus, he was asked, do you think they know what's going on here? And he said specifically, I think they have an outline, but within that outline there is room for play.
Right.
And that is exactly what I think this was. I'm not expecting them to answer everything. I don't even really want to know absolutely everything. Like you said with the statue, there are, however, a few things that I would have liked to have known that they could have been nice enough to answer, that I think would have been interesting to have an answer to, that they completely dodged for the sake of this season that didn't really seem to go anywhere.
And it was mostly for the sake of these side flashbacks or whatever the hell they're called that don't mean anything.
Yeah.
It's not important.
Yeah. Second big problem. The characters of Jacob and the smoke monster. Who by that I mean the person that the smoke monster turns out to be. The problem with these two things is they spend a lot of time on the issue of these two characters, but they're introduced so late that we don't really have the time to be invested in them.
And I don't think that, and people can put this in the comments if they want to, I don't think anybody was ever really interested in what Jacob was doing or what his function was. And let me tell you something. Remember when we first heard about Jacob, Locke went to that little shack and somebody said, "Help me." Well, what happened with that?
I suppose we are supposed to infer that was actually the smoke monster fucking with him, so that he could set all this up. But that doesn't really interest me very much.
No.
And neither of those two characters, neither Jacob nor the smoke monster, interested me very much because... Not even just because they weren't very interesting characters, but because we already have about a dozen or so characters that we are interested in.
Right, and also with John Locke actually not being John Locke in the last season, but being the smoke monster guy, weren't you reminded of Alien Resurrection, where it's not really Ripley, so who cares?
Yes, although I will give the actor credit for playing.
He was terrific.
He played two distinctly different characters,
yes, he did.
And you were never confused as to which one was which.
No, and you never looked at him and saw John Locke. And he's absolutely terrific.
Yeah.
The first thing I ever saw him in was an episode called The Pegasus in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Me too.
And I didn't think he was all that spectacular in that, and I see him in this, and he's really, really terrific.
Yeah. Next problem. Unanswered questions and unanswered issues and things that just plain overall don't make sense. We'll save this for part 3.